Hello and welcome. Welcome to our webinar, Innovation Spotlight, Embracing Technology for Individualized Integrated Wellbeing in Schools. I'm Deborah Quazzo, and I have the pleasure, I'm the co-founder of the ASU+GSV Summit and the managing partner of GSV Ventures. I'm thrilled to have everyone here today with us for this incredibly important conversation. This webinar is co-hosted today by our partner, Presence. Presence is innovating in every respect and is focused on how schools assess and address student special education related and mental health needs through remote assessments and teletherapy services for K-12 schools across the country. They work with over 10,000 schools, public, private, charter, and virtual, to support the needs of children to help them thrive inside and alongside the classroom. Most of us know that May marks Mental Health Awareness Month. But today we're here to talk about something even broader, holistic well-being, and how supporting the mental, emotional, and academic needs of students, staff, and families is essential to success in our schools. We all know that human connection is at the heart of learning and development. But in today's environment, schools are stretched very thin. Many simply don't have enough staff to meet the evolving needs of students. At the same time, aligning and executing on multi-tiered systems of support, the MTSS, continues to be a real challenge. We believe that technology has the power to help, but not just any technology. It has to be purpose-built to meet the realities schools are facing today. So today we're going to explore what that looks like in practice and how partnerships, programs, and innovation can come together to create a more connected, sustainable ecosystem of support. To set the stage for this conversation, I want to ground us in some data that Presence and Move This World recently extracted from a survey. An overwhelming majority of educators, 90%, agree that mental health and emotional challenges negatively impact students' ability to learn. Despite this consensus, many schools still struggle to build effective systems to support students' mental and behavioral wellness. In fact, more than 60% of educators feel that their MTSS programs for mental health and behavioral wellness are either lacking alignment or have significant room for improvement. And what's more, less than 40% feel their schools have the necessary resources to align these supports effectively. This sobering data begs the question: how can we meet the growing demand for creating a connected ecosystem of support? We're all here today because we know how important this conversation is. I'm excited to explore how technology is being harnessed to expand the reach and flexibility of critical resources and creating human connections importantly. From addressing IEP needs to providing comprehensive mental health support to students and educators. I'm now thrilled to introduce our exceptional panelists who are trailblazing integrated solutions for well-being in schools. Each one brings a unique perspective on the topic. First, we have my longtime friend, Kate Eberly-Walker. Kate's an education industry leader, author, and working mom with more than 20 years of experience leading high-profile education companies. Today, she leads Presence as CEO, the leading provider of K-12 remote special education and mental health evaluation services. Since 2009, Presence has partnered with over 2,000 schools across all forms of school and across the entire country, delivering over 7 million teletherapy sessions, empowering speech language pathologists, occupational therapists, and behavioral and mental health professionals to support student needs. Our second panelist is Sarah Potler-Lahane, who is the founder and CEO of Move This World, a proactive and preventative mental health platform for students, staff, and families in pre-K-12. In her role at Move This World, she helps students thrive in the classroom and beyond. As the author and creator of the curriculum, Sarah has helped millions of young students establish and maintain skills, develop healthy relationships, build trust, and navigate the challenges of an increasingly complex world. Finally, our third panelist is Courtney Flokus, the Unified Student Supports Officer at Indianapolis Public Schools. In this role, Courtney is uniquely positioned to recommend, develop, and execute systems that seek to mitigate systemic structural barriers to inclusive education. She champions the strategic alignment of programming that promotes student belonging, safety, and positive school climate through a racial equity lens. With their combined years in education and the various ways that each interact with mental health and our education system, this should be a very thought-provoking conversation today. And we'd love to hear questions for our attendees. We encourage you to submit questions throughout the conversation. You'll find the Q&A area in the toolbar on the right of your screen. We will hopefully have time to address as many of them as we can before the session ends. So let us dive into our conversation immediately as our panelists come up on the screen. To help set the stage for our discussion, I want to ask you each to respond to a question about diverse learners within today's national context. With all your collective, extensive experience supporting students across the country, what is one observation you've recently made about the challenges impacting students today and their ability to learn? I'll start with a different district perspective from Courtney, followed by insights from Kate, and then Sarah. Courtney, over to you.
Thank you so much, Deborah. I would say one of the most pressing and consistent observations that we are seeing here in Indianapolis is just how deeply unprocessed trauma, chronic stress, and mental health struggles are affecting students' ability to connect, regulate, and learn. Many of our students are navigating personal instability, identity-related stressors, or community-level adversity, and they're bringing those realities into our classrooms every day.
Kate, you want a great, heartbreaking comment, but yes, Kate?
Yes, thanks, Deborah. What we're seeing lots of things. I think one of the biggest trends that we're picking up on is that there are more and more requests coming into us at Presence for help addressing mental health needs, providing mental health supports, and they're increasingly in reaction to a crisis. So, there's this feeling that we're getting further underneath something to where there's less and less room in school planning to roll out proactive measures to prevent the crisis from happening. And, we're in catch-up mode, really trying to do our best to react crisis by crisis as they come up. So, that's one thing that I'm thinking a lot about is how can we turn that around? How can we get out from under that and make room for the more proactive programming?
Thank you, Sarah. Your perspective.
Thank you, Deborah. As Kate said, there are increasing moments of crisis, and we're seeing increases in behavior challenges, special ed referrals, and frankly, teachers who are stretched thin. And teachers who don't have the tools and the training and the support to navigate all of the increased behavioral needs and social emotional needs, and they're not supported in doing those things that distract from effective teaching and learning. And as Courtney said, there is so much that our students are carrying, and there are increasingly external factors that are impacting students' ability to process emotions, to navigate challenges and stressors, older siblings caring for younger siblings, dual working families, the 24/7 news cycle, more acute stress and anxiety that students have to deal with every single day.
Okay, let's switch gears a little bit. I think we all embrace the extraordinary kind of crisis that we're in and the tremendous need for responses. And so let me kind of ask each of you potential solutions to the crisis, to the challenges that we've laid out. And I'll start with Courtney. Your title kind of says it all, Unified Supports. That's probably a pretty wide berth. I'd like to dive into this. And can you kind of, Courtney, define what that means and describe the various supports that you all are providing today in Indianapolis? I know that IPS is also a very high-performing system. And so really, really great to hear the challenges and what you're doing, what the work you're doing there.
Sure, absolutely. Thank you for that. Well, I am the proud Unified Student Supports Officer, as you mentioned, and my team and I work alongside school leaders and staff to build district-wide systems designed to eliminate academic barriers, to student success. So my team oversees special education, mental health, discipline, social emotional learning, attendance, 504 coordination, and even a little bit more. We strive to ensure that all 54 schools under our umbrella operate from a system of multi-tiered systems of support so that every student has access to the right level of support at the right time. We don't always get it right, but that is our goal. And ultimately, the challenge is that students' needs don't just show up in isolation. And so we recognize that our solutions also can't be siloed. In IPS, we are working to build integrated support systems that speak to the whole child. And we're also making investments in building capacity in our staff and strategically leveraging community partnerships so that we can deliver consistent and high quality services.
Thank you. It's great. Critical work. As we hone in on the district and school perspective, it's helpful, really helpful to understand the impact of those supports for students. And to get at the heart of the issue, I'd like to explore how we can truly integrate academic and mental health services through forward-looking strategies. And Kate, Courtney just shared the perspective of IPS. Our innovation is an innovation spotlight on technology. Before we really get into the different support students need, tell us about how you're helping schools with the evaluation process to actually better understand what students may need in a customized support plan.
Yeah, so some of the most valuable work I think that we're doing at Presence with districts is in the area of evaluation. So before we can begin the work or direct a student to whatever they may need, and this may be identifying that a student has a learning support need. It might be identifying a student that should be directed to a gifted and talented program. There are many different directions that we might point a student towards. It might be more targeted needs around executive functioning or attention challenges, right? So helping schools sort through what is happening with each child. Where are they at? What do they need? This is the kind of thing that we have found over these past years has really lent itself well to teletherapy and telepractice. It's something where we can bring in a team. It's often school psychologists doing cognitive and behavioral evaluations, also doing a lot with our speech pathologists in identifying speech disabilities that may need addressing, and so on. You can use the technology to bring in a team to just help schools get caught up on any backlogs in this area, or just speed up the process of getting the evaluation done, because that's when the work can begin fully. So we're seeing that be, we're always looking for what are the best ways to integrate the tech-enabled teletherapy work into a school. You want to make sure it's working, it's fitting in with everything else that the district is doing. And this is one of these areas where being able to have someone come in with a bit more of that outside perspective as well, and conduct the evaluations and get the programming set up. That's a really big and kind of easier way to bring something in to the processes that are already working. And this is something we do with Courtney and team. How can we come in and help and deploy the tech enabled service in a way that's going to support, not disrupt everything else that's happening in the school.
Perfect. Sarah, we're already talking about the importance of leveraging technology to address the continuum of support. And Move This World has extensive experience with shifting toward early, consistent mental health support. How's your team harnessing technology to create a meaningful experience for the users?
Well, one, ease of use is paramount. So we know with any behavior change, if it's not easy, it's not going to happen. So we build consistency and common language with easy tools for educators where they just press play. And they follow along, and there's no planning or prep required. They follow along with short videos where there are built-in facilitation prompts, sentence starters. It helps meet teachers where they are. And this delivery model makes it so that you don't have to be a licensed clinician to deliver this work. You can be a teacher, a human being who's just showing up as yourself and following along, ready to engage in practice alongside your students. 2, the video delivery allows for continuity across diverse educators and teaching styles. And this allows for consistent implementation with the ability to differentiate for each student. So that's really important. And 3, the technology allows for data and reporting that supports fidelity of implementation and monitoring and evaluation of impact. So through reporting and engagement dashboards, administrators have real-time visibility into who in their district is using and who is not, and who may need additional support. And last, technology makes this accessible for families. We all know that we get all of these notifications from school. It's hard to keep up with all of the needs and demands as parents. But through technology, we can engage families where they are and support them in proactive, preventative mental health support on the way to work, on the way to soccer practice, over breakfast, over bath time, without being an added burden or an additional item on their to-do list. It can really integrate and be accessible for all of these stakeholders, educators, clinicians, district leaders, and families.
Wonderful. I want to remind the audience too that to please submit any questions you have. We have this wonderful group they'd love to answer once we get through our series of questions here. We go back to Courtney. Indianapolis has taken a long-term view when it comes to supporting student and staff well-being. Can you share a little bit more about the vision behind your 5-year mental wellness initiative, what inspired it, what's included, and how you're working to bring it to life across the school community?
I sure can, and just bear with me because it is a pretty big plan. But if I think about it as succinctly as possible, I would say that our 5-year mental health and wellness strategic plan, or Say Yes 2.0, is our district's bold next step toward creating a trauma-informed, mentally healthy, and equity-driven school system. The YES stands for yielding equitable supports. And over the next 5 years, we plan to expand access to culturally responsive mental health and wellness services, embed preventative strategies like conflict mediation, restorative practices, youth leadership development, and social emotional learning into school culture, and remove barriers to care for students who are undocumented, uninsured, or facing other systemic obstacles, which we face and see every day. The strategic plan includes Tier 1 wellness education, common referrals for internal and external mental health support, therapeutic mobile units so that we can get closer to our families and remove barriers, be it transportation, access, or time, as well as staff and family wellness training and prepaid mental health services to close every potential gap that we've been able to see over the last few years. Our vision is pretty clear. By 2030, we want 90% of our students to access some form of tiered mental health or wellness support with measurable reductions in discipline incidents, chronic absenteeism, and significant increases in student-reported well-being, graduation rates, and attendance. So this initiative and this plan isn't just about providing services. It's about reimagining what school can be when wellness is actually a right instead of a reward.
Wonderful. It's fantastic leadership. Thank you. Kate, I'm going to zoom out here, and your team thinks a lot about burnout, and you have a thoughtful solution for this. How's Presence leveraging technology and specifically AI to reduce provider burnout?
Yeah, we are thinking about this every day, rolling out new features in our platform, really trying to get underneath this idea of what is everything that we can get our technology to do so that it frees up stress time, distraction for a provider and allows them to do the fundamental work that they want to do or trained to do around engaging with students, interacting with students. So we really look at, all of the work that surrounds that, which can add up to be half of someone's time in a work week, right, can be spent not directly with students, but in all of the other work that goes around the planning, documentation. If it's not happening online, the transportation and commuting between locations, all of the compliance work, the notes, the schedule coordination. There's a lot of work that happens to make the work happen, and so we really are looking to go after that and automate as much as we can of the note-taking, documentation, and planning elements, which you can actually do more readily when the service itself is happening through a platform. And that doesn't have to be remote. We, for a long time, were really very focused on the remote therapy use case of, addressing that challenge where you had a student and a therapist in two different places and needed the tech to bring them together. We are increasingly focused on what our technology can do for a provider in their work with a student, whether they're in the same room or not. Just to have it happening through the technology allows for much more efficient serving up of the right content, the right activities for engagement, automated documentation, and note-taking. There's just a lot of load that you can use technology to take off that not only doesn't displace or take away from the human interaction. I think it actually can really enhance it just by reducing that distraction. So I think this is a big moment for this right now. I mean, just what AI can do now versus 6 months ago versus a year ago. It's incredible the way it has accelerated our development cycles in what our team is able to build into the platform. And I think this is going to be a big part of the future of just the way we all work and the way educators work, even in person with their students. I think the other area where I think technology is really helpful in reducing staff stress or burnout is in surfacing the sort of relevant knowledge needed in a moment, the information that they need. A lot of the stress and burnout that is happening across teams is because they're being faced with an increasingly diverse amount of challenges. I talked earlier about a lot of it comes up in crisis mode where there's no ability to quite prepare for what's going to be needed. And, we of course can't expect everyone to have learned everything they need to know, back in grad school and pull it all, or in a PD session and pull it all out at exactly the moment they're going to need it. So building more tools that can allow for like really tactical, easy, real-time pulling up of that knowledge and information in the moments where it's needed is another area that we're really looking at that I think can help our educators who are on the front lines to feel more ready and prepared and comfortable doing the work that they need to do.
Yeah, it's great. Great application of AI, getting the friction out and compressing time, the time dividend, as they say. It's pretty key. We're also, Courtney, we're seeing IPS obviously embracing technology in lots of unique ways. What has been the impact of your team leveraging virtual services for some of the psychoeducation evaluations, et cetera?
Yes, using Presence for our virtual psychoeducational evaluations has really transformed our ability to provide timely and equitable support. As Kate mentioned, the list of priorities is quite lengthy, not only for district administrators or building leaders, but also for teachers. And so in a large urban district like IPS, logistical barriers like staffing shortages, student mobility, and even just the sheer geographic footprint of our district often slows down the eligibility and evaluation process. So with a combination of virtual and in-person evaluations, to Kate's point, we've been able to gain traction on more timely assessments, more authentic assessments, and more robust data. This innovative approach also directly supports the work that we are doing with Say Yes 2.0, as our goal of removing systemic barriers to support and care for our students and our staff. So through our partnership with Presence, again, we've learned that virtual doesn't have to mean impersonal. And when done right, it means accessible, consistent, and student-centered.
That's great. Sarah, I want to turn to you on a topic that has certainly getting a lot of attention these days, and that's funding. At the nexus of special education and gen ed mental health supports, how might schools think about funding to ensure all kids get the care they need?
Well, we all know the saying that all SPED students are gen ed students first. And we must approach funding this work through the same lens we bring to SPED and MTSS. This is a continuum of needs and a continuum of supports. And of course, there are some students who need more targeted interventions and supports, but there is the goal of exiting them back into a tier 1 environment for teaching and learning. And so given that continuum, we have seen districts successfully braid funding across SPED, general operating budgets, Title I, Title II, and or Title IV dollars. We've observed districts who may have initially used grant funding or ESSER dollars to launch the work, then build in sustainable funding by braiding this various funding across different budgets and aligning leaders and stakeholders. And I think this is the key piece here, is aligning stakeholders. And I've seen Courtney do this in a beautiful way in her district, is bringing together different folks from different teams with the shared goal of building holistic wellness for all stakeholders. So leaders across student services, special ed, MTSS, professional learning, family and community engagement, again, with the shared goal of supporting holistic well-being for everyone in the school community. And so by aligning leaders and teams in those shared goals, we are able to pull resources together more effectively, and those resources are less siloed. And again, want to give a shout out to Courtney because I've seen her do this in a beautiful way where different teams are all collaborating and pulling each other together to lift each other up. And I think we can all learn from her example.
Excellent. Kate, we've talked a lot about technology today, talked about a lot, period, today. On a very practical level, is there one thing that schools can do to get started using technology to meet student needs?
I mean, I think the practical angle here is just really to start small and try things out. I mean, it's the same thing that, I remember being told by those who were, way at the forefront of integrating AI into their daily work a couple of years ago, telling me like, you got to get in ChatGPT, you got to start trying stuff, you got to do some things and see what works. We try to roll out our technology at Presence in the same way to make it easy to just try it. So we offer school-based providers access to our platform in a tool called Kanga, and it's a platform that allows them to use technology as part of both their online and their in-person therapy services. There's a library of activities that can be used. There's documentation tools and so on. And we intentionally offer a free trial of it to anyone who wants to get in and start using it for this reason, that with a lot of this stuff, there can be uncertainty or hesitation. There's a lot of different types of technology and ways to be using tech in your practice as an educator. And, you've got to make it pretty low stakes, I think, to try and see what actually makes a difference. And I mean, I think maybe you find a new way of doing something. Best case, you figure out a way to have technology take something that you just don't like doing, but have to as part of your job, and it'll do it for you, right? And then it starts to build up. So I think that it's my sort of practical level advice is really as much for the creators of technology, all of us who are out there serving schools, is like, build it, offer it in a way that it's easy to try. and get some familiarity to understand which of the tools out there are really gonna work for each individual, because of course the key is using it after after you've done the implementation. So yeah, I think everything should have some form of a trial, make it easy to figure out how you're going to use it independently.
Perfect. Courtney, the really key topic that we all hear about a lot is the one of family and community engagement. And can you talk a little bit about how the comprehensive holistic supports that you all are using to support schools actually lend themselves to driving that level of engagement from families and community at large?
Sure. Personally, I think that when districts take a holistic approach to student support, family engagement then becomes more authentic and meaningful. Through the next iteration of our mental health and wellness strategic plan, IPS plans to host an inaugural parent empowerment conference. We'll do things like multilingual mental health campaigns and provide training like mental health first aid to students, parents, and caregivers. So we're trying all of these different ways to bridge the gap, make connection, build authentic relationships, and be in spaces where we can listen and learn with and for each other. And our goal is not to inform families, but rather to stand in true partnership, sharing insights, honoring and leveraging lived experience, and co-creating solutions that center student well-being. Holistic supports also means wraparound services. So whether that's housing navigation, peer mentorship, or mobile clinics, as I mentioned before, the things that meet families where they are really the things that will stick and that will help us build the kinds of relationships that will impact our students' outcomes. So these efforts have the ability to build trust, strengthen relational accountability, and also transform engagement.
Great, great. Sarah, I just want to come to you on kind of a perennial issue, which is the typical chaos you see at the end of a school year, which is right upon us now. What tips do you have for school and class leaders to keep students and staff focused and motivated to end the year strong?
Well, one, I think a through line throughout this conversation has been this idea of consistency. So I've heard Kate speak a lot to it. I've heard Courtney speak a lot to it. Whether that's using AI, technology, showing up consistently is the only way we will make an impact. And it's really nice. We talk a lot about mental health through the same analogies of physical health. You eat a salad once, you eat vegetables once, you go for a run once. That does not mean you are check the box, fit and done, and you never have to do it again. You have to keep showing up and keep doing the work. We are not all evolved so that we never have to think about our own emotional wellness and stress management because we did the work once. So consistency is key across the board. And I'm hearing that in everyone's responses, Kate and Courtney's. And so I think we need to bring that same consistency to the final weeks of the school year and support our staff because we're almost there. We can't just throw in the towel and give up now. And we have to find really intentional moments to celebrate the progress that we've made, acknowledge all that we've achieved through these structured and contained spaces to process the really big emotions of the year while also staying focused on what we still need to achieve. One of our favorite ways to reflect on the year with staff is to ask them to write a letter to their former selves on the first day that they showed up that year. So, May 22nd, I would say, Kate, I want you to write a letter to the Kate who walked in this door on August 16th. And what would you tell her? What should she know as she moves through the, 24-25 school year? And use that exercise. It could just be 2 minutes, but reflect on how you've evolved, how you've grown over the course of the year, and how you've really shown up and risen to the occasion alongside your colleagues and your students. And so this 2-minute exercise is an example, one of many ways that we can be intentional, be creative, still bring energy and purpose, but without requiring a lot of time, because we all know we don't have that. And we can have a big impact in reflecting on our experiences for the year and setting goals for the future. So taking that intentional moment to reflect, and I've seen teams do that, whether that's an individual practice like the letter writing exercise, or coming together as a team in notes of appreciation and gratitude for one another. It's simple, it can be not time intensive, but it can really help bring us together around our shared goals to end the year strong, despite all of the chaos and competing demands that the end of the year brings.
So can I share, Deborah, this reminds me of a really great learning that I just had last week. So last week we had one of our presence provider town halls. So we have a network of over 2,000 therapists who work on behalf of presence in schools across the country, and we bring them together as a community at various points in the year. And we just did our end of school town hall, and we had a guest speaker come on and take us through some lessons in self-care, which I think we all have quite a bit of familiarity with, but also with this concept that was newer to me of practicing self-compassion. And it sparked a lot of conversation at the event, in the chat afterwards, about that idea, which was simple but very eye-opening, which is essentially, when you make a mistake, you miss a meeting, you lost track of time and didn't show up for a meeting, or you forgot to do something that you told a colleague you'd do, or whatever the mistake is. Think about what you would say to your friend if they told you they did that. You'd say, well, you're really busy. That's natural that happens. It's completely understandable. Everyone makes mistakes. You would give a lot of compassion to that individual and say, that don't let that take away from all of the really good work that you're doing. But we beat ourselves up over these things and we hang on to them. And I think this is a very real feeling that really resonated with our teams who are out there working in schools in this time of year when there is that chaos and there's a lot going on, and you're also looking at I have more to do for this child or that child. It's a hard time of year where you can be very unforgiving of yourself. And so I just wanted to pass that along, because I found that idea of self-compassion to be one that we could all benefit from and pass on to others.
And I can also, if it's okay, reply to that, in that so much of what I appreciate about working with Kate and her team is when we are going in and talking to schools about the on-the-ground social workers, school psychologists, counselors that they have, the ability to bring in telepractice allows those folks on the ground to do some of that for themselves and to have more space to show up for students because of the additional capacity and other functions that the teletherapy practice allows. So I think that the spirit of self-compassion is made real when we can support the mental health staff in schools doing the work on the ground with added capacity, resources, tools, preventative and proactive in nature through our work, but then bringing in the teletherapy and those counselors to fill in gaps. And, a question came up last week that supports this vision of self-compassion. That is, what is it that you want to do today that you're not able to do? What do you want to do for your students that you're not getting to because of all of the things on your plate, whether that's administrative, logistic, or just life? And so how can we bridge that by some additional capacity and teletherapists who can help make this truly a coordinated, continuum, holistic delivery of care?
I appreciate that point. And I will just add, if I can be transparent for one moment, I would caution systems leaders, building leaders, when we find that we have freed up some of that time for our staff, it's important to not then fill it with all the other
Yes.
priorities. So what Sarah and Kate have named is true. That is what we have experienced, that there is additional capacity. How can we leverage that capacity in a way that sustains our staff and not continues to be such a burden and barrier to their personal wellness and success?
Great point. Courtney, why don't I'll go back to you then. If we think about, fast forward to thinking about going back to school, now that you've gotten over the chaos of the year end of school, the year end, just a little, get a comment from each of you about the trends and shifts you guys are looking for and watching for in terms of student support needs going into the school year next year.
Yes, I think that it is more of the same of what we are currently seeing. So in terms of how we are preparing our students for the coming year, Kate mentioned a bit ago, preparation. I think if we can be very intentional about the lessons we've learned, particularly since the pandemic, that our students would be better off because of it. So taking the time not only for us to have a break of our own, but then leveraging the lessons that we have learned over the last few years, meeting students where they are, providing resources and supports not only for our students, but also their families, prioritizing staff wellness and building capacity at a school and district level is really, really critical. Sarah mentioned before the interconnectedness of the teaming and removing as many silos and barriers as possible is really where you get to the sweet spot, not only when it comes to funding and being able to purchase the things that you need in order to make your district better and more sustainable for those you serve, but also so that there's coherence across the board. Everyone understands how each priority really interlies and links with the other. So that it doesn't feel like one more thing to take care of yourself or to prioritize the wellness of your students, but it really fits within that picture that you have of what school is today.
Kate, you want to comment?
Yeah, I mean, I think that part of that too, part of wanting to continue and build on what everyone has been working on is in this current environment. I'll be honest, there's real worry about funding, about budgets, about things shifting, moving, or constricting. And so I feel like the question of the day, the feeling of the moment is like how can maybe we got to figure out how to do more with less, not just do more, but do more with less. And what are ways that we could try to do that still feel impactful and positive and not like a compromise. It's hard. We all face some degree of that, feeling of needing to compromise, and we don't want to, especially when it comes to serving children. And so, this is just one example, but something that's really on my mind because of the work we do around therapy is where could we group students? Where could we appropriately align groups where they can truly benefit from learning, practicing skills, developing skills with each other, as well as with their therapist or educator in a way that, maximizes the budgets we have, the staff we have, the people we have, and sets them up to impact several students, versus one-to-one. So that there's this practicality of, limits, or at least worry about limits coming. And so I think that's something that I'm feeling a lot of, responsibility around, like, well, maybe we can help figure out ways to do that don't compromise the result for the children.
Yeah. Sarah, you want to comment?
Sure. I mean, building off of that in the same spirit, I think that there is so much fragmentation in this work within districts, and oftentimes it is siloed, and you do have the tier 1 programming and intervention happening here, and you have tier 2 here, and you have tier 3 here, and these programs aren't talking to each other and they're not aligned. And yet the leader of the district, it's the same leader who's managing all of these different programs. And so something that Kate and I have done a lot of thinking around is how do we build coherence? How do we ensure a truly coordinated continuum of care? And there's this beautiful infinity loop that I see when I close my eyes that has alignment across all of the tiers within MTSS, and everyone is learning this common language and practicing these skills in tier 1, and then those who need more targeted interventions can move into tier 2. Those who need more acute clinical care can get it in tier 3, and then they can exit back out so that we can be cost effective, and then students who need the care can enter in and get the support they need. So I think alignment is critical so that these programs can be stickier, so that they can be more sustainable, and so that operationally too, it's easier to manage. I've also been thinking a lot about, we're talking about consistency and ease of use. So anything that isn't used, again, we don't see an impact, we don't see a behavior change, and I know that's also top of mind right now for districts that are cost conscious, is how do we ensure that we know that the products and programs we are purchasing are being used? And so through technology, we can really embed this work into the DNA and the operating plan and the culture of how a teacher runs their classroom, how a principal runs their building, how a district leader runs their community. How do we really embed this? So this is what it means to go to school. When you think about teaching and learning, thinking about the whole child and the whole self is part of it. Learning these critical skills to manage your impulses and navigate challenges and set and achieve goals, really critical life skills for leadership and beyond. Just embedding that. And so using technology to make this work as easy and seamless to use as possible so it is not a burden for educators or clinicians. And then the third thing I've been thinking a lot about are our secondary students. And I think for so long there has been this fear of this work for middle and high school. And I can't tell you how many conversations, even in the last few weeks, where middle school girls have come up. And there's this idea of like, how do we support these students in particular? And it feels like at the elementary level, it's in folks' comfort zone. The idea of bringing in emotional identification and recognition and management into this work. But how do we support our middle and high school students and secondary students in ways that are authentic, that are true for them, that meet them where they are, where they can see themselves and feel a connection either to the provider in a tier 2 and tier 3 setting, or in the content that they're getting in tier 1 with their classroom teacher. And there's so much that we've done as an organization in terms of really trying to make this feel authentic, because if it doesn't feel real, if it doesn't feel honest, if it doesn't feel vulnerable, students see that and they can cut right through that. And so we've been really leaning into student voices and their experiences and their feedback to shape the development of both the content and the experience.
Fantastic. Now thank you guys so much for this conversation. A quick last question about sharing a personal moment or story from your work that reminded you why this kind of holistic support really matters. And maybe Kate, I'll have you kick off. And
yeah, so for me, I had a real moment of realization, again, coming from the lens of we're doing our work at present remotely. Our employees are remote first, or a remote first workforce. Our providers all work from home. Yet we're serving children who are in a school building every day with a lot of other adults surrounding them and working with them as well. And, I think particularly through the years of the pandemic, we became like really remote. Like we stopped even going and doing visits on site. And so we got back to that, honestly, first with our own company. I started realizing at some point, I have people who need to be trusting each other and working together who haven't been together, or they haven't spent time together outside of,
Right.
tactical meetings. So we started bringing them together, had a light bulb of like, well, we need to get back into our schools. Just because our daily services are not happening in the building doesn't mean they aren't happening for students and with staff collaborating with us who are in the building. So, I will still remember going to one of those visits where we were going to a school partner that we'd worked with deeply for a long time in Texas. I had not personally been there myself. We're going to meet a student who had really, had life-changing results from working with one of our speech therapists, went from nonverbal to verbal. We're going to meet not only him, but his parents, his classroom teacher, the staff at the school, walking the halls. I just realized, something that I should have been thinking about more, that I had to recognize in the daily work, there are multiple perspectives that we need to pay attention to. We need to think about what the context is for what our piece of something is being tapped into. And I think that same philosophy has been true in some of the work here that I've done with these women and their teams. Sarah talked about the continuum of care and recognizing that what happens in her work with a student and with staff should connect to what happens in the work of a presence provider and staff, which should connect to, Courtney's team on the ground. And it's, we can't be speaking multiple languages, and expect to have the same powerful result that we can have in person. So I've come to appreciate that the key to effective remote connections is actually spending some time in person and understanding what the context is.
Nothing better than live school visits. Sarah, do you want to quick, and then Courtney, I'll have you wrap it up here for us.
Sure. So again, I'm loving this through line of consistency for me in this conversation. Consistency is key. And so I'm thinking about a district we support in rural Maryland that used our staff supports this past school year, our adult wellness platform. And just like the student work is short, accessible, easy to use through video, it's the same premise, short form videos for staff. And there was a lot of resistance in this district to just doing this work in general. And there was maybe some acceptance that students needed these supports, but the idea of the staff using these short videos to start and end their own internal staff meetings, executive meetings, cabinet meetings, collaborative planning meetings was like, what? You're asking me to reflect on my feelings, to set an intention with my peers. And then they also had the opportunity to practice individually and independently with short form videos on their own, in moments of transitions, waiting for students to come back from lunch or recess, or even at home on the couch in their sweatpants. Well, this one rural district that was supportive of the student work, but skeptical of the adult work, but did have a leader who was championing it, eventually came around and said, okay, these exercises are so short. Some of them are 43 seconds. Anyone can find 43 seconds to breathe and set an intention. And in doing so, I recognize that this has really shifted the tone of our meetings, our conversations. We are more open with one another. The meetings have become equally as productive, but less transactional and more human. We can see each other as our whole selves and whole colleagues, support one another. And so the story that you asked that I share is actually not about students, but the adults and the leaders who are doing this work, who may not have been convinced at the beginning of the school year that they truly, they weren't as visionary as Courtney to say, as she outlined, staff wellness is one of your priorities. I think they knew it was important, but didn't know if they would really commit. But in seeing that it can be consistent, that it can be accessible, that it doesn't have to be overwhelming, and that it can be easy to integrate into everyday meetings, they truly found the value and felt the shift in tone and how they worked together.
All right, Courtney, love to hear from you as our final answer here. Great.
Absolutely. So many connections to what Sarah was just naming. So it's really interesting. But in IPS, we have a crisis response team that is essentially kind of triggered, if you will. And that crisis response team, as we call the CARE team, went out into a school for a pretty massive crisis that occurred at that school about a year ago. And they were the team supported for across 4 days. So not only for staff, but for students, any family member that had experienced or was experiencing significant grief or any trauma related to the crisis event. And so as part of that 4-day kind of triage and support, our CARE team provided the staff and community with mental health plans, as well as these monthly wellness checkpoints that were online. And we leveraged our online tools so that the folks that needed that kind of touch point, that wellness check every 30 days or so, would have access to it. If they needed it more frequently, there was robust material available to them. They could go on every day if they needed to. And then the folks that, didn't process their trauma in the same way wouldn't have to. And there were also opportunities for the staff, families, and even students to join group calls monthly. Again, just to process, have someone to talk through what they were feeling, what they were experiencing. And these were alongside our licensed clinical social workers that are a part of the CARE team. But I say all that to say, a year later, we always come back and wrap that support around. We like to have an opportunity to both reflect, but also see, did we miss anything? Did we miss anyone? A bit of a step back. And when we went back into that school, of the 25 staff members that we met with on this particular day, 3 of them said that mental health plan, that wellness plan that they generated over that 4-day period, literally kept them in the profession. Having access to those tools, being able to engage when they needed it, not feeling pressured to do so if they didn't. Those were sustainable traits that were a part of that plan that really allowed them to not only grieve and overcome their trauma in a healthy way, but also in an authentic way. And it was really eye-opening for us to see, these aren't just, they're not just lessons or resources. They can really be a lifeline to our staff and to our community. Absolutely. And, that is just like the power of bringing all of this together. As Sarah mentioned, the interconnectedness of this and the intentionality when we do so in a very coherent and intentional way. And so we were super grateful to have had that experience amidst the significant tragedy.
What a wonderful story and wonderful and not wonderful story to end on. Thank you all so much. I think we've hit our time, and so appreciate your personal and professional insights on all this. Kate, Sarah, Courtney, thank you to all the guests. Thank you for joining us. Please, if there are any other questions, shoot them in and we will get them to the right people. And here's to creating a more seamless and impactful continuum of holistic supports for students and staff. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.